morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy, Justin, and John. How are you all today? Hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello. I'm blurry. I went blurry for a moment. Jedi Jared, 35 months. It's almost triple sub-anniversary song time. Almost. Next month. Next month it'll be triple sub-anniversary. I'm glad you're all here. We're going to do Centaurs today. And I did the green work, so, now we can actually work on his skin more. I've been staring at that skin going, if it's too red. But I kind of like it. I'm going back and forth on it. I feel like I needed to make it just a little more golden. So maybe we'll go over it. Because I like the sunburn look, but I feel like it needs to be brought up in a different direction. Hello, Joshua. I was just thinking I was going to repaint his skin. I think I want to make it more tanned. So I'm going to start with a similar mix to the last one we did, but instead of going with 9402, which is heraldic red, which is very, very strong, I think I'm going to go with more of a pink. I think I'm going to go with a little bit of runic glow and see how that works. Which may look weird, but even with a magenta kind of pink, like with a purpley kind of pink, it's still a red. It's still a pink. So mixing it with this yellow golden color is probably going to give me a fine result. I'm going to try it and see. Sorry, Kariniko. That's all right. Since I'm changing the skin tone, it's just, it's all right. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay. Alrighty. So this is what we're going to do, I think, now. So before, I was using heraldic red, which is a really strong red, and it gave us this very, very ruddy tone, which is a very sunburned tone, which I like, but I'm just worried that it's not quite good. It's not a good match for the horse parts. So instead, I'm going to go to a more magenta. Now, since this is like magenta and purpley, and this is golden, they're complementary colors, right? Purple, yellow, kinda. It's kind of close. When you do this, what will happen is you will mute the skin tone. It will be less vibrant. It'll be more muted, more brownish, for lack of a better term. Oh, good, Joshua. I'm glad they were valuable. Super, super, super. There will be more. And one a month is what I'm doing. I did 2 the 1 month because I wanted to do a couple. But yeah, we're going to do another. I'm probably going to do a basic one on color theory. Just really, really simple color theory. Thank you, Quindy, for the link. My YouTube. Yes, for those who aren't aware, I'm doing short YouTube videos on the fundamentals of mini painting. Got a lot of the basic stuff down. I haven't done a dry brushing video yet, though. There we go, guys. It's time for dry brushing. But everybody knows dry brushing. So, I don't know about dry brushing. Maybe I should do a video on dry brushing alternatives. Ooh. Buck the trend. Go Anti-Games Workshop. All right, so let's do this mix. I'm going to try this mix and see if I like it. I'm looking for something a little bit more golden for the skin tone. So Griffin Golden Brown is what we're starting with, which again is close to the old chestnut gold. You could also use Golden Skin Shadow for this. 9091. Yeah, that's the item number. And then I am going to pop 1 drop of this in just to see how it changes. And I'm going to mix that up before I add my light tone, because I do want to mix a shadow. So where's my mixing brush? There it is. So that did change it to more of a ruddy dark tone. I kind of like that, actually. It's pretty nice. Let's add a little bit of white now and see what it turns into, just to see how red it really is. When you're having trouble judging the particular colors in a darker color, adding a little bit of white or off-white can help you see them better. All right, I think I need a little more red. I still don't want to go totally too But we're using a pink because it automatically has less red pigment in it. Is a way to kind of inch toward the color that I'm looking for. That's a little bit better. I want something that's pretty rich. That's actually a nice color. It looks a little bit, yeah, you guys can see it. So actually, these two colors made a pretty nice skin tone then, with a little bit of the ivory to kind of bring it up. I think I like this a little bit more. I think I'm going to work with it. Yeah, Games Workshop, that's one of their core techniques they teach, Pendrake. And their highlight colors in their paint range actually are dry brushing colors. Like, they're actually thicker. They're made for dry brushing. Because this is just the way that GW rolls. They like to hand you a fish. They don't like to teach you to fish. And so by handing you a fish, I mean, they make all of their highlighting paints suitable for dry brushing, but nothing else. But yeah, so they are a big fan of dry brushing. It's why dry brushing, it's one of the reasons dry brushing is so popular in like North America and probably in the UK, I think, where Games Workshop is very much a gateway entry into the hobby. And so you get taught that technique as one of the first things you ever learn. I think that also Rhonda teaches it in our introductory Learn to Paint kit. It is a very simple way to start highlighting. You know, it has downsides, but it is very simple. I like the historical guys tactic more. They don't teach you that it's useful for general dry brushing. They use it for weathering. I think that's maybe a more, I don't know, it gives you a little bit of a better start. As far as, you know, utilitarian, if you're trying to get to a point where you like what you're doing. I don't find the texture pleasing on dry brushing. People do disagree with me, so that's fine. All right, now I need a brush, a base coaty brush. Let us use, I don't want to use giant brush, though I guess I could use giant brush. I have been trying to beat up giant brush more and break it in. Giant brush is giant brush. Very, very giant. It's a fairly wide belly, so I want to break it down a little bit. So I will use it today. I'll see if I can. This is thicker paint, so it's the time to use it. So we're going to base coat the skin with this color. We're going to base coat right over the stuff we did before. We'll get closer. We'll get in focus. There we go. Much better. What is the MSP Bones equivalent for steel plate from the Pro Paints line? There really is no great equivalent for steel plate, because steel plate had a flake in it that was extremely sparkly. But if you were looking for a very dark steel metallic, what I would recommend they do, Crows, is use adamantium black mixed with a little bit of one of our darker steels, like 9205 probably. So adamantium black 9124 mixed with like 9205. If you mix those two together, then you'll be good. You'll be close. They actually come with agitators in them. The problem with the steel ball, Joshua, is you want to make sure you buy the ones that are intended for putting in paint. If you use a really cheap grade BB or something like that, it can rust and wreck your paint, and will rust and wreck your paint. So stainless steels are not all created equal. Some will actually discolor a lot faster. The pH of paint is different from just water, so it does it can affect it. So I'd be cautious. Every MSP bottle actually has an agitator in it. Unlike every other paint on the planet, we do add an agitator, but it's volcanic glass. It's a bead of volcanic glass. So a lot of people can't really hear it. It still clicks. Hear the click? So it's still there. You don't really need to add another agitator, but some people like a heavier agitator, and I think that's why they reach for those ball bearings. Just be very careful and make sure that you are buying ones that are for putting in paint. Don't just buy a pack of BBs or something. Because rust will chemically impact your paint eventually. It can ruin it. It depends on how bad it is. So when I want to mix it more, I'm more likely to use, something non-reactive, like a bead, like just cheap glass beads, or like volcanic glass is best because it's heavier. Some people use hematite beads, which are also inexpensive, and they're very heavy and they're non-reactive. What you're looking for is something that's non-reactive. So let us wipe out our skin tone from before with something that's, see, a little bit more golden. I want him to be more tan. I decided I want him to be a tan Centaur. And if you want to know how I did this more sunburned skin that we're painting over, you can look at our previous video for this guy. It's still, it is a skin color that I use, like when I used to paint historical ancients, especially Vikings, I would use that skin color because it's more likely that, you know, they'd be a combination of tanned and burned with fairly fair skin tones and always being out in the weather. Got a little divot on my surface here. I gotta take off one sec. There. So yeah, so it's still as much as I'm taking this more reddish tone off of him, it still is a very useful skin tone if you are looking for a fairer, more wind-burned, sunburned skin. And I've used it to good effect on historical models, but you could easily, you know, transition that to just about anything with a fair skin tone that's been out in the weather a lot. Just remember the shapes of the muscles are going to dictate the shapes of the highlights, and that the highlights should be toward the top of the muscle masses if your lighting is overhead. I mean, male torsos are actually like fun to do when they're really muscly because of that. They're very well defined. And you just treat each muscle kind of as its own shape, which we'll get into. But actually, if you're anybody who is on my Patreon for the $10 level, I just did a spheres, highlighting and shading on spheres PDF for you, because we're doing a kind of a thing on different shapes. That I actually use as one of the models featured in that PDF is actually a male model with a ripped torso that I did for Sergio's class when he was in the US. So it's an excellent model of how to do a very over muscly torso if you are on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/paintingbig. The next shape I'm going to do in April, I'm going to do cylinders, because cylinders are fun. And essentially I'm doing the shapes and I'm showing like how they differ with highlights and shading from when they're just a dull surface to when you're trying to do like NMM on them. Quindy's too quick. Alrighty, so yeah, I think the skin tone is more like what I wanted. You could go darker, a lot darker with the skin tone on a Centaur, of course, also. Or you could go olive skinned. Be careful, just make sure that when you do choose, oh, I blew off, who cares? When you do choose the olive skin triad, just, you can have some interesting interactions with other colors because it has so little red in it, so little warmth. It can be almost greenish, which is why we call it olive skin. So just be aware that when you use the olive skin triad or anything that is a little bit odd as far as skin tones go, you gotta remember that you're dealing with a skin tone that is almost greenish, not reddish at all. So some of the colors that you may find that go with other skin tones you use may not go well with olive skin. But that said, olive skin is based on Mediterranean skin tones and would be a great fit for a Greek Centaur. Yeah, hematite is, it is stable, correct. I know many people who use hematite beads for that reason, as agitators. I would be much more likely to take a chance on that than on stainless steel. And the reason is that when I started at Reaper, Al was a Reaper owner who's retired since then, and he taught me. He had done paint lines for a couple other companies, and he had learned the hard way that stainless steel isn't always stainless, as they had gotten the smart idea to put agitators in their paint, and they had gone with stainless steel ball bearings, and essentially they put the ball bearings in, and the entire batch of paint was wrecked because they rusted. Like they sat for a while before they went out, and when people tested them, essentially they were like, oh my god, this paint is like broken. So ever since Al told me that story, and since I myself have seen rust on stainless steel that's exposed to various elements that isn't just, kept well oiled in a machine, I always caution people. It may be okay, it may not be okay. And I'm assuming that since companies like Gale Force 9 are putting out like ball bearings for putting in your paint now, I'm assuming that those are okay, but I don't know. So, just be aware that there can be issues. There may not be any. You may be just fine. I always like kind of take some of these stories with a grain of salt, but on the other hand, like oxidation in your paint will impact the chemistry of it. And with paint, chemistry is everything, like pH is everything. And so it can definitely react to a shift in pH depending on the paint. So all I want people to be is to be aware and to be cautious. And when you can, use something that's chemically inert, like hematite or volcanic glass, to be agitators. You really don't need that much. MSP is not that thick. So sometimes for the thicker formulations of our paint, I will use multiple glass beads. Like I'll put 3 in there, but that's all I've ever needed. Like I really don't feel it's necessary. So like more than that is necessary. Maybe the one exception that I would make would be our brush-on sealer, because it's so important to get the matting agent in solution. So you can kind of see, by the way, look at this, how interesting this is. With only one coat, I can still see a little bit of the gray showing through. I can also still see that this arm was painted a different color. So on our second pass, we'll get rid of that. But it is an excellent example of how if you undercoat different parts of the model with different colors, you will be able to see a difference until your paint gets opaque enough to cover that up. That's kind of like if you do sketch style or zenith priming, you can see the difference, but after a certain amount of layers, it will get hidden again. Yep. Thanks, Scrying Eye. Thanks for the verisimilitude on that verification. Yeah, I don't trust it either. Like I said, Al's story stuck with me, and once I learned more about paint chemistry and how important pH is, which of course, anything you put into paint is going to impact it unless it's totally like neutral, like most water is pretty neutral. Pardon me, I just needed to take that mold line off there. Actually, I've still got a little bit. I never needed one dragon. Like a lot of people use the vortex ones, a vortex mixer or whatever, But I mean, you can certainly, especially if you have like wrist pain or hand pain, like if you've got fibromyalgia or carpal tunnel or anything like that where repetitive motion really hurts, rock it. Like go ahead and do a paint shaker if you want. I've never needed one, so I'm in the habit of shaking my paint before I do anything. So I just never bothered to get one because it was just money I didn't need to spend. But I've heard people have great results with them. And like I say, if you've got, like a lot of people have like wrist or hand issues with repetitive motion, then go for it. I used to have issues like that, but I do a lot of like yoga and physical therapy now, and I find that I don't have problems with my hands and wrists anymore. So I haven't been driven to get a paint shaker. Alrighty, just trying to get that last little finger, the thumb around there. Then we'll do a second base coat, just really, which is going to be thinner, thinner and faster. There, all right. So we've got a good solid coat. Oh, I forgot his face and ears. Oh, noes. He was going to be faceless. Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways you can do. Black and steel mixed with adamantium black. No, adamantium black. Although adamantine is similar, but I mean, I don't have as much experience mixing with adamantine because I didn't really use a lot of the Pathfinder line before I went away. At least not the metallics, because I've got a very particular selection with metallics as far as what works for me, so I didn't really break into the Pathfinder metallics. Though they have a couple of unique colors. But yeah, I'd use a mix of that, and then if he really wants the black, he could just use adamantium. But as I recall, there was definitely still a silver sheen in that old Pro Paint color, so I'd rather say do a mix. And you can tell him that if you want. And warn him it won't be sparkly like steel plate was. That was a function of the flake that we got from that paint company, and they are out of business. So, have been out of business for like 15 years now. So you won't get the sparkly, but you'll get the color. If he just wants kind of a black steel, then that would be what to do. All right, let's get his little mouth here, which will make that lower lip a different color, but not quite yet. And we have to remember the ear over here. Nice thing about this giant brush is that it can cover a lot of room, but it also has a really good tip to it, so. I don't even remember the formula for that one, No Man's Zeke. I'm gonna thin my paint here a little bit, put a big drop of water in it. Any of the heavy gear colors, they've been out of print for so long. It's been so long since I mixed them that I can't help you there. Honestly, I always felt it was kind of close to tarnished brass. You could try mixing tarnished brass 9198 9198 with antique gold 9050 and see if it got you there. But I don't remember those colors. Like, I don't remember the formulations. So I just remember at Gamma Shield being a bit of a warmer but still brown or gold. So you're just going to have to experiment on that one. Now I'm going to go over this one more time with this color. And I've thinned it down because I don't need coverage for this coat. I just need a nice smooth go over. Whenever you can see maybe a little bit of your base coat through the model material or your primer through your initial coat, it's fine. I won't go over it with another thick coat. I'll just thin down my paint. I added a big drop of water. It's probably about 3-to-1 on this coat. My normal base coat is around between a 4-to-1 to a 6-to-1 paint to water as far as drops. Yeah, but I only have an encyclopedic knowledge of their formulas if I mixed them a lot. No Man's Zeke, so. Be aware, though, that most of those heavy gear metallics were their paint guy essentially mixing our colors to get a new color. So mess around with mixing some of our golds together and brass and bronze, and you'll probably get it. Not the bones, though. All of the colors that he was mixing were core. That's how he did most of it, unless he wanted us to match a different color from a different line. Or he was doing something funky. But most of the colors are just that. With metallics these days, I find myself using only the pure form and just adding pigments myself. So like I'll use as bright of a silver and as bright of a gold as I can get, and then I'll add other stuff to them to tune what I want. So if you want to do that, then the first thing you need to do is to identify what gamma shield gold is. Is it a reddish gold? Is it a, is it more yellowy and rich? Is it brown? Does it have a little bit of brown in it? Then start experimenting. Probably use new gold as your center, 9051, or dragon gold if you want to do it with the bones material. Although bones was not used for heavy gear, so you won't get an exact match that way, but you may still find a color you like. All right, I think everything is gone over. Everything is matching for the most part. So that arm still looks a little pinkier, but as we add highlights, that will go away. I think almost everybody's got some paints that have been discontinued a long time. Deep Amethyst comes to mind. That was one of the first cancellations. The only reason more of us aren't like you, Nomad Zeke, is that, maybe people came in later on and weren't around for some of those cancellations. All right, I'm going to add, I'm going to keep my initial mix, which turned out to be a 4-2, 4-2-1 really. So I'm going to actually mix 1, and I'm going to go more 2-1, and then I'm going to go with more of the creamy ivory for this. So since I know that was a 4-2, i.e. a 2-1, I just did a 2-1 there. And we're going to pop that in and see how we like it. Hello, Agent Marvel. So just as a reminder, I will be here streaming today and tomorrow, but then I am off to Canada to see tiny puppies. Or not so tiny puppies, as they are probably going to be like 18 to 20 pounds at the time I see them. All right. I want one more thing of creamy ivory. Want to bring it up lighter. You want your highlight to look noticeably different. Yes, puppies. Clear Viridian, just for the record, Clear Viridian and Clear Phthalo Green, the special one that we put out, are similar, and honestly, Clear Phthalo Green is superior in my opinion. And Plum is very similar to Carnival Purple, maybe Eldritch Purple. So it's not like there are not colors that are very similar. You could also hit Clear Plum, honestly, by just mixing Clear Purple and Clear Magenta. So just do that. It's essentially, it's just me wanting to put out a more reddish purple clear. All right, I think we're good. Now we're going to switch to a smaller brush because I need to be more precise. So big brush can go away. Thank you, big brush. Thank you for your service. Grab my normal brush. Yes. You'd abandon the stream for puppies. I wonder if she has new pictures. There we go. So Ron is apparently recontacting Trenchworks to get me Stumpy the Dragon's head and legs. He was going to check in on it. I just saw that on my phone. So that's good. And there we are. There. Now I have acknowledged that Stumpy the Dragon may have limbs coming. That would be great. Because, as you all know, it's hard to paint a dragon on stream to promote Bone 6 if it's Stumpy. Oh, okay. There you go. So I will abandon y'all for puppies, and you will have stuff to replace me. Awesome. Good timing, Justin. Hey, you exist. Hi. Alien flesh quantum. That's a weird one. Ah, fun, fun. Nice, Iffy. Yeah, it's crunch time for sure. I get that. All right, so I am a little bit like thinking that my skin tone is not dark enough. Like if I highlight from here, it's going to be a pretty white skin tone. So maybe I'll grab and make a shadow color for it real quick. Because you can see, even with the way the light is falling, there should be some darker shadows. Oh no! That's a bummer, Twisted Oma. I don't know that anybody like made a note of the formula on Oops All Berries. Yeah, try to look third party. They might have some bottles left. I believe it was a mixture of a skin tone and a gray, but I don't remember off the top of my head on that one. Yeah, I think I'm gonna mix a shadow. Mixing a shadow. What will we do? We will make our core mix. So always start with your core mix, everybody. So actually, let's just strengthen up our core mix here. Since I thinned it down. So it's not just that I like to start dark on my skin tones, but sometimes I do want to mix a shadow that's a little bit darker. And when I do, then I want to start with my core, just like I start with my core mix and building highlights. Yeah, I'm going to miss it because I'm going to be traveling. Okay, I'm going to add my my creamy ivory to this because I do want my base tone, even though I'm going to darken it. I want it to actually be my base skin tone when I start mixing the shadow. So then take a couple of brushfuls, big fat brushfuls over here. And I think I want to go, There aren't that many browns that you can really use here to darken down. You can use any of the dark browns like russet brown or ruddy leather. You could also use muddy brown. Those are probably the three that I would add to skin tones off the top of my head. Anything else, actually saddle brown would work too, but it's not really dark. But anything else might have too much black in it, and that is really going to skew your skin colors. So I am going to, since I started out very brown, since I went too red the last time, I don't think I want to go with ruddy leather, but I will try a little bit of russet brown, and then I will try maybe a little bit of ruddy leather to bring back some ruddy tones in it. Ah, that was actually more than a little. That might be a little bit too much. We'll find out. That really brought it down. Very dark. Oh, heck. Well, when you go too far one way, you can try to bring it back by going the other way. This is a very yellow color, so I need a purple. Where's a purple? Where's my sticks purple? That'll work. No, maybe not. Maybe... Yeah. I'm gonna do some weird stuff. Sorry, guys. I feel like weird stuff. So whenever you have a color that has gotten way, it kind of is powy. It's kind of intense. This is too intense for a shadow. I want it to be muted. I'm going to add some wild violet and see what happens. Because this is a very yellow brown, so I'm adding in purple. But browns tend also to be oranges, so I'm adding in a purple with blue in it. Oh, that cools it down. That's a little nicer. So when you add a complement, it won't immediately like make the color go crazy like you think it might. instead, it's just going to make it a little bit, it's going to cool off and not be so intense. It takes quite a bit, depending on the color, to really shift away. So that's 2 drops of wild violet. Now it's starting to shift a little more purple. Like I can kind of see how it might, with another drop, it might go a bit purple. So I think this is where I'll stop. But essentially, instead of being really, really bright now, it's more muted out, softer color. It also has a weird texture though, Eric. It has that coverage because it's a very goopy base that dried up and separated very easily, which was one of its downsides. It also has a very gritty matting agent. So there were definitely downsides to that coverage. Both of those things help it to cover. Very cool, crows. All right, so I'm going to take this shadow and I'm actually going to kind of put it down here in places where you can see it belongs, right? So when we kind of turn the model toward the light appropriately, it really does tell you where you should shade. So if I stopped right here and just took a picture of this, I would be able to just then replicate it. I'm essentially using my ring light as the main light source, but I can also just hold it and look at it on camera. In my case, I can take that shortcut and I can block in some of these shadows. You can also see that some of the shadows are darker than others, right? There's a little bit of shadow here, but it's much darker on the abs here. So let's take a moment and darken these shadows. Now, the darker you go on the underside of these muscle masses, the more like bright your overhead light source is going to kind of feel to the eye of the viewer. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, Eric. And then we want to do a little bit toward the bottom here. We definitely have a bit of shadow here. So it really is, if you don't know where to put shadows, it really is paint what you see. Use, get yourself a light that can, you can kind of hold the model up under it, or you can tilt the model so that the light is falling from above. And then paint it where you see it. Paint the shadows where you see them. The other thing to remember with shadows, and again, this harkens back to my recent $10 PDF, is that the shape of highlights and shadows should always emulate the shape of the surface. So like on these little abs, my shadow should be crescent shaped, rounded. And as I move over to these guys, I also need to make sure that it's a crescent shape. It's not just a line or a box. This is reversed. Then this rib cage is also a rounded shape, so you have to go in there with a rounded shadow again. I'm going to darken it more underneath the arm though. So now you can see how those are coming out on camera, like how much more dramatic the shadows get. And this is just like, if you really want to do this technique the way